Now, since I've been talking about people's brains keeping track of their bodies, you might have wondered, are we talking about men's bodies or women's bodies? Well, both. This is why men and women are the two most different groups of people in the world. We all have a universal brain structure, and it comes in two basic models. So gender differences is the next easiest step in talking about the development of cultures before we even get to ethnicities. Within any ethnicity, you have men's culture and women's culture. Because anywhere you go, men and women are two groups of people who each have things in common with each other, and who talk to each other about their ideas. That's why in America we have men's magazines and women's magazines. Everyone's brains interprets the world in terms of maximizing their own survival rates. You know all those disagreements men and women get into where neither side can convince the other they're right because they don't even seem to be talking about the same thing? It's because they're interpreting the world differently. You know how men like to have sex at least once a week, but women only ovulate once a month? The only way those numbers fit together is if for most of human evolution, on average, each woman had 4 men who were trying to have sex with her once a month, and each man tried to have sex with 4 women every month. If you want to get a job as a biologist, you'll have to learn more complicated math than that, but that's the basic idea. And you know how having a baby is a lot more work for a woman than it is for a man? If a woman is going to go to the trouble of having a baby, the more men she has to choose from, the better off she'll be. Because if you're going to go to that much trouble to have a baby, you want to have one with the best man you can get, according to whatever your idea of the best man is. Your idea of the best man is always going to be the one you believe will give your children the best chances of growing up to be adults and have children of their own. There are a lot of different ways that could happen. For instance, you could try having a one-night stand with Superman and then take your chances on raising the kid yourself. Or you could figure out which men wanted to stick around and help you raise the kid and pick the best of them. Or you could do what some women do and marry a guy who wants to have kids with you and help you raise them, but then go get pregnant by a guy you like even better but doesn't want to stick around, and then let your husband think the kid is his. A lot of people have wondered why so many men and women are obsessed with looking like Ken and Barbie. Why do women find tall, muscular, dark-haired men attractive? Well, for most of human history, and in a lot of the world even today, people have made their livings by muscle power. So the more muscle power a man has, the better a life he can make for himself and his family, and the stronger children he'll have. People's hair gets darker as they get older, so a dark-haired man looks like he's had more time to learn skills, acquire resources, and build up social status among other men. So that's a clue that he has more wealth and power than a light-haired man, which means he can use that stuff to help raise his children. Why do men find young, slender, blonde women so attractive? If a woman is old enough to get pregnant, the younger she is, the more childbearing years she has ahead of her, and the less likely she is to already have children from another man. So the lighter her hair is, the younger she looks. Also, the bigger her eyes are, the younger she looks. You know how women put makeup around their eyes? They're making themselves look younger by making their eyes look bigger. The old Barbie dolls had something like a 48-inch bust, 24-inch waist, and 36-inch hips. Every time a woman has a baby, she puts on weight that's hard to get rid of afterwards. So the more slender a woman is, the fewer children she looks like she's had, so the younger she looks. From the age of about 15 to 17, Women have a certain hip-to-waist ratio, and then they lose it and never get it back. Men all over the world find that hip-to-waist ratio attractive because that's the sign that a woman is fertile and has her entire reproductive life ahead of her. And the larger breasts a woman has, the more milk she looks like she can feed her babies, so the stronger and healthier they'll grow up to be. A lot of these physical characteristics that attract the opposite sex have physical limitations on how much of that characteristic it's possible for a person to have. So the human brain has never needed an off switch to tell when to stop finding more of that characteristic attractive. This leads to the problem with the old Barbie doll and her inhuman body proportions. If she was a real person, she'd be seriously unhealthy with that figure. But she's not a real person. She's made out of plastic. So she can look super attractive to men because human physiology isn't a limitation for her. But then a lot of girls grew up with this plastic woman for a role model. Naomi Wolf talks about a lot of problems like this in her book, The Beauty Myth. People need to keep certain height-to-weight ratios in order to be healthy. If women get down to 24% below that height-to-weight ratio, they start having serious health problems. The typical fashion model is about 23% below that height-to-weight ratio. Some women have metabolisms that give them that figure. Most women don't have that metabolism, but try to get that figure anyway. So a lot of women play a dangerous game of trying to be as attractive as possible, meaning to attract the most men possible, which would give them the best choice of men to hook up with, which is how women have the healthiest children, but they push themselves to the brink of starvation to do it. And of course, some women push themselves even further than that, trying to get even more slender, and they end up with eating disorders. This also shows where the stereotype of the dumb blonde came from. Remember, each person always makes the best decisions they can think of in their situation. If you're a young, blonde, slender woman, you are almost guaranteed to have an endless supply of men who are willing to tell you anything you want to hear. A lot of men will also be willing to spend a lot of money to buy you anything you want. So in a way, a woman who is young, slender, and blonde has a serious handicap to her ability to learn stuff. Because all those men who want to hook up with her don't really care whether she can differentiate what's real from what's not, and they're willing to do just about anything to save her from having to worry about stuff like that. But in another way, everyone always learns how to get what they want in whatever situation they live in. For women who have an endless supply of men to choose from, one thing they can do is learn how to get what they want from men. Women are already more picky than men about their romantic partners, and the more men a woman has to choose from, the pickier she can be. Also, the more intelligent a woman is, the more independent she is. The less a woman depends on any man, the more men she can find to choose from. So a lot of men consider beautiful, dumb women to be the best kind because they look attractive, but they don't know how to do anything for themselves. So if you hook up with them, they'll depend on you for the rest of their lives. Or at least, that's what they make you believe. Is the woman really that dumb? Or is acting dumb what she's learned how to do in order to get what she wants from men? There's a lot more to gender culture than I have time to go into here. These are just some good examples of big mysteries about human behavior that have been unraveled about how the human brain works by looking at what it makes the human body do. Also, this background in how men and women get together and have children brings me to the idea of racial superiority, and why that idea can be thrown right in the garbage. Evolution is sometimes called the survival of the fittest. I've just told you a lot of examples of how individual people compete against each other for mates. That's how evolution works for every species, by individuals competing against other individuals. You don't even need to think of this as evolution. Let's keep this as philosophical as possible. If the man or woman of your dreams moved into your neighborhood and you tried to hook up with them, and so did 20 other people, who would win? The woman of your dreams can't get pregnant by more than one man at a time. Even the man of your dreams can only get so many women pregnant before the other women lose interest and go look for someone else to hook up with. Well, in that process, you're not competing against people from Africa. You're not competing against people from South America or Asia or any other continent. You're competing against people from right there in your own neighborhood. And the people in every other part of the world are doing the same thing. This means evolution had no way of producing racial superiority. Unless you want to talk about superiority of absorbing sunlight at high latitudes, or superiority at deflecting sunlight at low latitudes, or a few other things like that. Intellectual superiority of races isn't possible. 100,000 years ago, our ancestors all lived in the same part of the world. Anywhere in the world people live now, it means people were smart enough to figure out how to live there. We all have the same body structure, we all have the same brain structure, and we all have the same physical needs for food, water, shelter, and so on. There is no part of the world where people can afford to be dumber than the people in another part of the world, because no matter where people, or any other species, live, they always push the environment to its limits. Even in the part of the world with the most abundant resources, people, or any other species, would just keep having children until they used up all their abundance and went right back to competing against each other. So people always run into the limitations of their environment, no matter where they live, and individuals keep competing against other individuals to attract mates and have children. In the past few centuries, as people have begun traveling the world, races have started competing against other races, and some have obviously won. Race has been used to unite groups of people against other groups of people. But in the end, it's still individuals who compete against other individuals. If you kill some people and take their land, that wasn't automatically survival of the fittest in the sense of the fittest genes, but it was still the survival of genes. If you have a rifle and the other person only has a bow and arrows, or the other person has a rifle and you have a Gatling gun, what you really have is the survival of the genes of the person with the highest technological level. So that says nothing about the genetic superiority of anyone. And anyone can try to get a higher technological level if they get the resources and the education they need to build up to it. So this raises a very interesting question. If people in the United States are so obsessed with proving they're superior to everyone else, why do people like Jan Brewer keep undercutting our education system? If Jan Brewer even had an education that was worth anything, she would see that's not going to work.